All right, so we're in Clear Lake, Iowa, fixing to turn onto Richie Valens Drive here. But the reason we're here is to see something right here called the Surf Ballroom. And we're gonna go down Richie Valens Street here real quick, and then we're gonna turn right onto Buddy Holly. This is the town. Mason City and Clear Lake are joined very close together. Clear Lake is actually a lake, and it's right there. Now we're turning right onto Buddy Holly, and this, you'll recognize when you see it. This building from the 30s is fabulous. This is the most historically rich building I have been in a long time. See the building here? This is the place where they played their concert February 2, the night of February 2, 1959, boarded the Bonanza just after midnight, which would have been the morning of February 3. And of course, that didn't work out. But we're going to go in, take a look around. I'm hoping to play one of the tunes on stage with my guitar in here, which will be cool if they'll let me do it. If they won't let me do it, I'll probably just do it anyway. But we're here in Clear Lake. Here is the Surf Ballroom right here. The building is original to that night. Most of everything that we're going to see inside, with a few exceptions, is all original. Let's go inside. So, it's the Surf Ballroom right here. Go inside and see if we can play guitar. Here's a memorial that was built afterwards for those three guys. Here's the ticket counter on the night of February 2, 1959. You would have had to step up to this ticket counter and either purchase or present your ticket to get in the door. Most everything that you see inside of here is still original. It's the original wood and the original stuff that's been preserved historically. I don't think they're still using this as an actual ticket counter. This is a historical booth now. Let's go inside and see what happens. So we're here. This is the ballroom. This thing is crazy cool. I mean, look at this brick original. This is the restrooms and the original drinking fountain. It's been here for a long time right here. Since that time, they've converted this area right here into kind of a museum, but this area here is the concession stand that would have been used that night, and all of that stuff is pretty much original. Let's go ahead and go over here and take a look at Buddy Holly's actual guitar. So when you go to a dance, you can sit at any of the tables around here, but check this out. You can also, just up from the dance floor is these booths. So you can sit at a booth. Two couples can fit into one of these booths here. Look at all these things. These are original from back in the day. They have not been restored or altered. I mean, look at all the space in here, and look at the size of this dance floor. This place is huge. Occupancy, I don't know, I'd guess 400 or 500 for a dance, something like that. They packed them in here. So we're here in Clear Lake, and I've come up with a new girlfriend. What was your name?
Denny.
Denny. All right.
Denny. Denise.
Denise.
Denny.
Well, Denise, thank you for letting us in here. You've been around here a long time and working here and
Volunteering.
volunteer.
And just love this place.
Yeah, well, you've been very...
It's kind of our church.
Yeah, it's
the
amazing.
Walls talk.
I guess you have a lot of people like us that stop in and ask all the same questions all the time.
So fabulous.
Yeah.
So fabulous.
And all of this, you were telling me, is mostly original to that night. So very cool. And y'all are setting up for an event tonight?
Yeah, we have a chamber event tonight for the new magazine that comes out, the vacation guide for the Clear Lake Area Chamber of Commerce.
Good. And you were telling me...
Libby's the head of tourism there. She's the one that did it.
Oh, okay, cool. You were telling me about the plane crash itself. What caused that plane crash? Do you know?
You know, they don't really know, but anybody that you talk to that night, all they remember is not a horrible, horrible storm that they shouldn't have taken off.
Right.
But again, if you were on the street, a little bit of a blinding blizzard.
Right.
So it truly was big snowflakes, big blizzard, and that's all anybody remembers.
Yeah.
Snow, a blizzard.
Yeah, but there wasn't anything mechanically wrong with the plane. So what do you think happened? Why did they crash?
Um, Personally, I think it's the blizzard, and maybe, you know, when you go up and you're a pilot, but when my dad was a pilot, so I listened. But you know, when you go up and then maybe you have that blinding thing, and then you hit that perfect
Right.
moment where things aren't right, and something happened, and then they went down. But
Doesn't make sense, huh?
uh-uh.
Yeah. Kind of flew it into the ground.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're gonna go out to the.
I mean, there's no ever been any stories of any foul play,
No.
that kind of thing. Um, the guy that lives across the street, Lloyd Ashland, he's like, I was here that night. I looked across at the surf, and it was a blizzard.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But nobody said it wasn't flyable.
Yeah.
And Jerry Dwyer is one of the best pilots ever. He would never have let anybody go up if he thought it was
Yeah.
not good.
Right. Well,
It's also 1959,
Right.
and a lot of, you know, a lot of more visual
Right.
stuff happened back then.
Right. Yeah. And the pilot was only about 21 years old. He's pretty young.
I can't remember because I would have said 24, but yes, he was a young man.
Yeah, very, very young. Okay, well, thank you very much for the tour.
But Jerry Dwyer wouldn't have let him go up if he didn't have confidence in him. He just,
Well, not only that, the pilot, Mr. Peterson, was a VFR pilot, so they wouldn't have let him launch if it was solid IFR and he was launching into clouds. So it
Right.
must have been a clear,
that was a visual.
it was a visual, clear night on Clear Lake, but
Yeah.
they only made it about 5 miles after takeoff, you know, something like that. So we're going to go out there. And you've got a guest star who's going to play on your stage here in a few minutes. Did you know that?
Mm-mm. Do we?
Yeah,
Is he here?
me.
You?
If you give me permission, I just want to play one song on the stage real quick.
You're going to ask Lori, but I don't see why she'd say no.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Denny. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Bye.
So this is quite the honor on the stage where those guys played February 2, 1959. They let me up here for a second with the guitar, and I'm trying to think of one of the songs that those guys played that night. The only thing I can think of, but I know part of the words to is, well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. And I think they did that in the key of A, so it should like this. Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. That'll be the day. That'll be the day when I die. That'll be the day when I die. So this is such a cool place, but they've put all the stuff on the wall since the accident, so it's just a historical thing. But you got guitars, drumsticks. Here's the headset that the pilot wore that night in the Bonanza right here on the wall. And then if you take a look around, this is the concession stand where people who bought a ticket that night would go and buy food and drinks right here at the concession stand. And then over here you got little tables and chairs and waiting area. But I imagine this entire place was just completely packed out during any venue that they had here. But historically accurate, this building is amazing. How original most of it is. Worth a visit. Let's head out to the crash site and see where the Bonanza hit the ground. Kind of cold out here. It's Iowa farmland, cornfield. The surprising thing is the number of people we've run across out here in just the last few minutes. Probably 3 or 4 different carloads on this random February day, March day, I guess, in 2021. But we're out here by ourselves now, so I thought an opportune time to plot a guitar and play. The other interesting thing to note is that the ground up here is rising. From the airport to here, it's a higher elevation. I kind of disagree with the spatial disorientation summary of this accident, which is AQP maneuver number 2, night spatial disorientation. I'm leaning more towards AQP number 4, which is really common. He didn't lose control of the airplane. He simply took off at night expecting it to remain VMC conditions, and it did not. Because it's dark, there's no lights out here, he took off, and there was snow and there was winter conditions, but it wasn't a blizzard. He simply had black dirt down here, black sky, and there's nothing to see, so you lose your outside reference. Roger Peterson was a VFR pilot, age 21. He wasn't really used to getting on the gauges. I think if he had a little bit of instrument training and had gotten on the gauges and got that nose up and coming up, they'd all be alive today. So I'm leaning more towards unintentional IMC after takeoff, even though it wasn't IMC conditions. It was night VMC, but you have to remember that VMC conditions where you can't see ground, sky, and earth, and it's all black, that actually equals IMC. You can't see visually because there's nothing outside that can make any sense. So, lesson learned for today, unintentional IMC after takeoff. Doesn't matter if there's clouds involved or not. I think these guys were unintentional IMC after takeoff. Don McLean wrote a song, and I'm going to play it now because my fingers are getting cold. That summarizes this accident. They caught the last train for the coast the day the music died, and they were singing bye bye Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. Them good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing this will be the day that I die. So this is the ramp. This is actually the spot where the Bonanza was sitting that night. They played in the band till midnight, got out here, loaded up, and made a takeoff at about 1 a.m. from this spot on runway 18 with a left-hand turn out to the northwest. Now, the interesting thing here is that both the owner of this FBO and the Bonanza and the pilot, Roger Peterson, they both checked the weather several times as early as 5 p.m. on February 2. So while the band was playing and setting up and doing all that stuff downtown, Mr. Peterson and the owner were doing their due diligence on weather checking. Should be a night VFR flight. Should be no problem. Mr. Peterson did not have very much experience. He did not have an instrument rating, and he was only 21 years old, so he could not have been that qualified. Even though it was night, not IMC, they did not take off into IMC, it was still unintentional IMC after takeoff, because taking off to the left on runway 18 and your left-hand climbing turn, there's nothing but black out there. It would have appeared to be totally black. So remember that when a controller tells you to maintain VFR, they're telling you to look outside the airplane. At night, even though there's no clouds out there and no IMC conditions, you got to look inside at your instruments to make sure your airplane is wings level and climbing. Roger Peterson did not lose control of his airplane. What he did was he flew it into the ground just a few miles north of here. The ground was actually coming up and he was descending. The airplane hit kind of wings level, little left-hand turn, but not much, nose low, and it skipped across that farm field for a long ways before it finally came to rest up against that fence row. So the takeaway is, even though it's night VFR or VMC, it's still IMC, and you're not gonna see anything. And if you're not ready for it, you're gonna pile that airplane right straight into the ground. Typically, unintentional IMC after takeoff ends up about 2.5 miles off the end of the runway. This one made it about 4.5 nautical miles north of here, so we got a little bit farther. But that's the unfortunate thing. So it's been a fabulous visit. Unintentional IMC after takeoff is the AQP maneuver that I believe is at fault here, at play. Let's go out on the runway. Let's commandeer a vehicle, go out on the runway 18, the same runway at the same airport that Roger Peterson used that night for my tiny little itty bitty fledgling YouTube channel. My name's Dan Grider. You've been watching Probable Cause.